Hello and welcome once again to 177 Nations of Tasmania podcast. In this episode, I'm talking to Mohammad, who grew up in a middle-class suburb of Amman, the capital of Jordan. Now, Jordan is sometimes known as the Switzerland of the Middle East. It's a small country and an oasis of peace surrounded by conflict zones. Now, through a series of what might be described as unplanned events, Mohammad has ended up as the CEO of the charity Variety in Hobart, Tasmania. But his first experience of Tasmania was actually in the remote little town of Strahan on Tasmania's west coast, where he initially got a job as front of house manager at one of the town's largest hotels. And this was certainly a unique experience, especially being the only person of Middle Eastern background in a small town. So stay tuned for that and more. Now, I've divided this episode into two parts because it's quite a long story, but it is one that's rich in warmth, insight, and personal reflection. And I think you find it takes you on a real journey as you learn more about Mohammed's background, what drives him, and how he's grown to feel at home in Tasmania.
So I grew up in Jordan, a small country in the Middle East, to a loving family, middle-class family in a nice neighborhood, but again, a middle-class neighborhood as well. I grew up with, I'm the oldest of 5 brothers and sisters, if you like, so I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers. Yeah, so it was just a standard growing up, I suppose.
Yeah. And what did your parents do?
So my mum, since she got pregnant with me, she left work and she never returned back to work. I suppose got busy with kids and everything else. So she was a very talented seamstress before.
Okay.
But then life got in the way, I suppose, and she became a full-time mum. My dad was in the army. He was in the intelligence services and grew up in that environment. We grew up in a 3-bedroom unit. Dad owned the premise, if you like. Underneath there was another unit, and underneath that there used to be shop front. So there was a butcher, a barber, a convenience store, and dollar shop and everything else. So pretty much everything very central, if you like. My mum and dad always taught us to be, very, very humble and very appreciative and all of the other things that go with it. Having said that, I don't think I've ever, even as a child, I ever thought I was missing out on anything. We went to private school, which in return, mum and dad, had to sacrifice a few things during those years. Mm-hmm. All of 5 of us went to private schools, and the school was really good, was brand new at the time. There was a community engagement from the school side of things as well. My family side of things is we are very close-knit family. And you'd have to be growing, 7 people in a 3-bedroom unit. Mm-hmm. You really, really learn to get along and compromise however you can. So mum and dad had a bedroom, and me and my 2 brothers had a bedroom, and my 2 sisters had a bedroom. So we shared pretty much absolutely everything during those years. Again, from a memory point of view, was peaceful, I suppose. The social life growing up was a big aspect of what we did. So not just our household family, if you like, that was close-knit, but my cousins, uncles, both sides of the family were very, very much part of us growing up. So we were in each other's houses all the time, and lunching here and dinnering there, and weddings and funerals and the lot, basically. So it was more of a social, was growing up in a village, it felt like, anyway, looking back at it now.
Yeah.
So everyone looked out to everyone, and it's a trait in Jordan that it's genuinely practiced, not necessarily spoken about. But hospitality and acceptance is a big thing in Jordan, and this is whether I was lucky or this is what happened really. But my family in particular were very much in the line of don't think of yourself like you are better than anyone else. There was always a very strong support provided to us kids by not just by mum and dad, but also, again, I keep going back to the extended family because that's really, really important to stress. My dad never, ever, ever hit me. He would never even get angry. I think him and I got in one argument, although I used to be, a shit type of teenager who thought the whole world revolved around him, and but he never ever got angry, and if he did, it would have to be for an extreme situation that really he had to get angry for. But he would say a couple of words for you, and that's pretty much it. It's one of those conversations you just crawl in your corner and you think, swallow me, earth. On the other hand, my mum was an extraordinary woman. She's a very strong, independent woman. Or she was, and dedicated her entire life to her kids, really, her husband, her life, her family, and her house and household. She didn't have high education, if you like. She finished school. She went into seamstressing and dressmaking and all of these things. But also, she's the woman who did not learn English or other foreign language at school growing up, and she taught me English and French without me even realizing that she did not even knew what the alphabets were. Right. I did not know until I was, I think, 11 or 12 that I knew that Mum actually did not speak English. And going to private school, you would do, I'd done a couple of years of French as well. And again, she never spoke a word of French. But the way she would do it is basically, Mum always was hands-on in terms of, helping us and supporting us and even teaching us and all of these things. So her way of teaching us English and French was, so let's say there is reading. So she will get the novel, or I'll get the novel. In the notes from the teacher, for example, will say they will need to read those pages or that chapter or the workbook or grammar or whatever it might be. So she will get all of that information. Then let's say, for example, it was a couple of pages of reading or a couple of chapters or whatever it might be. So she would say, where's the book? Teacher said you need to read this book. And again, she does not really need to say what the name of the book, because it will be written in English, but in Arabic, the description of the task, but the name of the book will be in English. So she will say, grab me this book. So I'll go grab that novel or book or whatever it might be, and say, you need to read between pages X and Y. So I'll start reading. And then if I go along the lines of Mark went to the shops and he bought whatever, the minute I go or try to decipher a particular word, then this is the minute she will step in and say, you haven't been practicing, Mohammed. Go reading, go back to your room and read it again twice or three times until you get it right, and then you come back. But and then I will go, like in certain occasions, I'll say, but how do I read this word? It's for you to learn. Right, and I will go back thinking, oh my goodness me, how do you say this word? And I need to get it right, otherwise we'll not finish studying this today, because that's Mum. You need to finish every homework you have before anything else, really. And in terms of writing, for instance, dictation or whatever it might be, so she will say, we would almost memorize what we had to write down, because clearly she cannot read out sentences or stuff like that. So she will say, all right, what do you need to write? I'll say this chapter or this paragraph or whatever it might be. Then she'll say, okay, keep reading it until you memorize it, and then you give me the book and you start writing it. And then she will literally go by the shape of the words or shape of the letters or whatever it is. And if they are not exactly the same, then clearly you misspelt it or miswrote it or whatever it might be. If it was something more comprehension, that I need to answer a question about whatever it might be, then so she will recognize that at that particular point in writing,
Okay.
you could not actually get the words right or the thoughts out right because there is a lot of crosses, like, words written and crossed, crossed. And she would say, oh, well, what are you trying to say here? And I'll explain it to her in Arabic. Okay, now you know what he's trying to say. Go rewrite it in English and then bring it back to me. And she pretend that she's reading it. But she was, what she was doing, actually, she's, I think, analyzing our behavior, I suppose, or our conduct, without actually having to read the words or read the work or whatever it might be. So yeah, so on that aspect, it was pretty astonishing discovery for me. When I finished my Year 12 exam, and that was it, I knew I have passed. And sitting in the lounge room with Dad, watching news, I think it was, and he said, so what are you planning on doing now? And I remember on the news there was a segment about the Parliament doing discussion or something along these lines. And I said, I want to be in that place. And he said, what place? I said, I want to be in Parliament. And he said, no, I'm asking you, I'm asking you as a job. What do you want to have as a career? That's not gonna. that's not a career. And I said, no, I'm serious. I want to be there. And he said, whatever. Yeah. So he just could not comprehend that politics could be could be a job. But that genuinely, the first time I thought I would want to do something that potentially I could, do something with it, if you like. I got bachelor, a degree, an enrollment, if you like, in a Bachelor of Business in Jordan, and so that was it really. I thought, yep, it is what it is. I have to do my uni degree. And another thing, again, to put things into perspective, in Jordan, or at least within my circle of family and friends, finishing school and going off to do something else that was not a path where you can even contemplate. If you don't have bachelor degree, then you haven't finished Year 12 yet. So before you even are game enough to start thinking about what you want to do in life, you better finish your uni. That was the pathway. So finished school, went to uni, done 4-year degree of Bachelor of Business. At uni was really, really good. I really enjoyed uni. It was, again, I loved the social aspect of the university. The university I went to was brand new university again. I was the second batch, if you like, of enrollment. So there was 3 buildings, I think, or 4 buildings in the whole campus. They literally were building it as students are coming in. It's a public university, if you like, and that enabled us to be, and it was a very different part of the country, although I used to commute every day. But being a new university, smaller cohort of students, by year 4 or by year 2, I suppose there was a lot of, felt like we were just literally back at school, but from people not from your neighborhood, from all around the country. And that was really, really special. It happened that an uncle of ours had a couple of shops that became empty, and we came up with this, 20-year-old boys who are about to take over the world, went to him and we said, look, we would like to rent that shop from you, these 2 shops from your shop fronts. We're going to turn it into an internet cafe. And that turned into a long discussion about what is an internet cafe and how on earth you're going to make money out of that, and all of these things, which was pretty fascinating. And one night, my cousin and I was a bit quiet in the shop, and we're sitting down and doing chat on some of the chat rooms, and my cousin said to me, I just found a friend of mine who used to be at uni, but now he's now in Australia doing his master's, and it's nice to catch up with him. And I said, just jokingly, I said, see how we can go and visit him. It would be nice to go there for a holiday. And he said, okay, well, I'll ask him. Now, to put things into context, in those days, for a young male coming from Jordan or any part of the Middle East really, who does not have a permanent job that pays well, it's pretty much impossible to get a tourist visa into Australia or America or Canada or any of those countries. Yeah, so for context, the reason why I asked my cousin to see how we can come for a visit was not because I was lazy to apply, is because there was no hope in hell for either of us to go for a visit to Australia. So fast forward, I think a month or 6 weeks later, my cousin called and he says, I've just checked the mailbox and there is a couple of envelopes, one for me, one for you. It's coming all the way from Australia. So I got excited. I came home. I went to my cousin's place and he said, over the phone, he said, I'm not going to open it. We'll open it together. Great. So we sat down, drum rolls, and we opened the envelopes. And to my disappointment at the time, it was a conditional letter of enrollment from Griffith University to do my master's in IT. It was exactly the same thing for my cousin. And I remember, I was so excited thinking, I have no idea what's in this envelope, but I think that's our ticket to Australia to go for a holiday. And then when I opened it, I'm thinking, that's not what I had in my heart. Masters, studying IT, none of it, absolutely none of it tickled my fancies by any stretch of the imagination. So again, sat down, had a good chat. My cousin and I told each other how disappointed we are and all of that thing. And, took the envelope going home and chucked it on the shelf in my cupboard, and that was it. About 4, 5, 6 weeks later, my dad comes to me and he says, I hear you're going to Australia. And I said, I'm not sure I am. I don't think I am. He said, no, I was talking to your uncle and he said that you and your cousin are going. And I said, no, I'm not. He said, well, is that because you don't want to go to Australia, or is that because you don't want to do your master's? And I knew exactly where he was going with this conversation. I said, no, I don't want to do my master's. I said, I've finished my study. I'm after my minimum requirement for life. I have a bachelor degree and I'm happy with it. And he said, studying is a good thing. He, again, like many in that part of the world, studying and education is a big part because it is your salvation in this world in a big way.
Yeah.
So anyway, he said to me, listen, if you decide to go and do your uni, I will fund every single cent of it. But on one condition, you leave from here to do your master's degree and you come back with your master's degree and you don't need to worry about funding. So I turned around and I said, listen, this is way too expensive. I'm not sure it will be best use of your money. And if you have that much money to give away, I'm happy to take it. And he said, no, I'm not going to give you money. I'm happy to sponsor your study. And I thought to myself, it's so tempting, but I honestly cannot commit myself to another 12 months of studying, not IT. And if I'm going to Australia, I'll be going for a holiday, so I'm not going to disappoint myself or him or anyone else for that matter. So that was really an emotional battle in my head for a couple of weeks. And then and I spoke with my cousin during that time, and he said his dad had exactly the same conversation with him. And then I thought, I don't know, I'm not sold, I'm not convinced. And then communicating with the university, with Griffith here, they said there's a way for you, if you want to come, you can actually enroll in an English course for 3 months. And the way how I understood it at the time is if you come in and do your study for 3 months, it's your guaranteed entry into your master's. So I thought, okay, well that's all right. So would give me another 3 months in Australia, which is not a bad gig. So then with that information, I got that letter or the email, I suppose, from uni to say you can enroll in an English school. And we applied, my cousin and I applied for the visa. And then here I am standing outside the embassy door with the visa on my passport and thinking, and now what? What do I do? So I thought, okay, well, I'll just go home and tell Mum and see where that happens. So I went home and spoke to Mum, and I said, I'm going to. She said, what are you doing too early? You should be at work. And I said, no, I'm just packing my bag because I'm going to Australia. And then, jokingly. And she said, what your dad was telling me about that, but you never said anything to me, so I thought it might not be anything serious. And I said, well, here's the visa. And she said, anyway, was quite interesting conversation. And at that point, I'm still deeply not convinced I'm going or I want to go. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, it's landed, so to speak, on my lap, and I'll just be silly for me not to carry forward with it. So that was a dilemma for, I don't know, a day or two, I think, thinking, what do I do now? Again, the time was really ticking. I had less than 48 hours to confirm and pay for my ticket. I had less than a week to actually be in Australia, and so there wasn't much time to actually contemplate and think. It was decision time. It's yes or no, and either way you need to act either way. And the word was out that Mohammed is going to Australia. So as I said to you, we are very, very close knit family, and that's not just the siblings and the mum and dad. It was more the extended family. So the next 48 hours were absolutely manic in terms of, everyone is coming, say hi or goodbye or take care or make sure you do this, or, in my day when I lived in Greece, they used to do this, or whatever it might be. So, all fantastic advices and beautiful well wishes, and, was really good couple of busy days. And then off I go on a plane, and a couple of my friends and my cousin were there to take me to the airport, and I think my brother and my dad shook hand. He gave me a cuddle, and he said, "Son, you are on your own. You make me proud." And I knew that
That's okay. Take your time.
I think that, as I said to you, my dad is a man of few words. And to me, that was the first time really when I thought to myself, oh shit, now I cannot turn around and change my mind, or even contemplate the idea of I can go there for a holiday, or all of these things. From that minute, it was quite a bit more serious. More serious intentions needed to be put behind it, rather than just yippee, I'm on a plane going to Australia for a 12 months gap year type thing.
Yeah.
So that was quite. It was an interesting encounter, to be honest with you, from a 25-year-old man who thought of the world as there is no responsibility and there is nothing I need to worry or care about, to my dad is paying for my year holiday, to all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh my goodness me,
Yeah. It's like a moment of destiny.
Yeah. Pretty much. I landed in this airport, went to the phone booth, rang the phone number I have, and I said, "Hi, Assam. I landed, and I'm waiting for you to come pick me up." "Yeah, no worries." I said, "I'm dressed this way, and look that way." He said, "Don't you worry, I'll spot you." So an hour gone. He said, "I'll be there in about half an hour, 45 minutes." So an hour gone, an hour and a half gone, and no sight of him. So I rang him again, and he said, "I'm at the airport. Where about at the airport are you?" And I explained it to him, and he said, "No, I can't see you. I can't see you. I'm standing next to whatever, looking at whatever." And he's going, I cannot see you." And I said, "Well, I am here. It looks," and I read the sign that says Sydney Airport. And he said, "What's that?" I said, "Sydney Airport." And he said, "Are you in Sydney?" I said, "Yes, I am in Sydney." He said, "I am in Brisbane." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So you're a bit far away, Mohammed. So give me a call when you arrive in Brisbane. I said, yeah, sure, no worries. So I walked out the terminal, and then I made my way to the taxi rank, jumped in the cab, and I said, I'm going to Brisbane. And the taxi driver looked at me as oh, yeah, right. Where are you going? And I said, Brisbane. He said, do you mean Brisbane Street? And I said, no, I'm going to Brisbane. He said, I don't go to Brisbane. He said, I said, can't I just catch a cab? He said, you can, but you can't. I said, so how can I get to Brisbane? He said, I'll catch a plane or a train or a bus or something. So he was very quick to, kick me out, thinking, what on earth this person is doing. So I walked to the taxi rank person, Marshall, and I said, I need to go to Brisbane. What's the best way to go there? And he said, well, you need to catch a plane. You need to go back to the airport. Of course, that was the international airport, so I needed to go to the domestic airport. And in my head, like, why do I need to catch a plane to go to another city? Again, coming from a small country where I come from, you don't catch a plane to go to another city within that country. It's, you catch a bus, you catch a cab, you catch whatever, or drive. So I said, yeah, thank you, no worries. But in my mind, I'm not catching a plane. Like, that's just ludicrous. What's the idea? And so I went asking back to the information center desk lady, and I said, are there buses or trains that go to Brisbane? She said, why would you want to catch a bus or a train to Brisbane? I said, because I need to go to Brisbane. She said, why don't you catch a plane? I said, I don't think I need to catch a plane. She said, no, catch a plane. And I think I must have said to her, train is cheaper. And she said, no, it's not. She said, she looked online, I think, but she looked at something and she said, there's a plane going on in 2 hours to Brisbane. It's $180. You'll get there in an hour, and it doesn't include lunch, which was Qantas. Or you can go on the train. It will take you a day and a half, I think, or 2 days. It will cost you $260. And that, when I thought, I don't know how this country works. So I said, okay, well, no worries. So I went to she directed me where the Qantas counter is. I went there, bought my ticket, jumped on the plane. I arrived in Brisbane, rang this very kind gentleman, and he came pick me up from the airport. And we stopped at Macca's for lunch that day, and went back to his place where he was sharing a house with a couple of students as well. He said, here's my bed, you have a nap, and we'll sort you out once you wake up. I stayed with them for next couple of days. It was the Queen's long weekend when I arrived in 2003. And then I think on Monday or Tuesday, whenever it was, he took me to uni, and he said, he literally almost, held me by my hand, and, this is where you go, this is what you do, all of these things. So I was never good enough to finish my English test or meet the minimum requirements. But I suppose you can say I talked my way into it, literally. But yeah, but then the excitement of actually finally I am where I came to be to start with, yep, very quickly faded when you start to think about, there's assignments, and there is reading, and there is all of these things that you need to sort. And for, I think, the first term where, and the university, if you like, system here, and particularly, being a master's versus my university system back in Jordan, and bachelor, was very, very different. So, master's clearly has to be very heavily tilted towards research and, papers and assignments and all of these things. But was, at the time, was painful. But looking back at it, it was really enjoyable, particularly at the postgraduate lab, where, you will go there at 11, 12 o'clock at night, and you stay there until 4 o'clock in the morning, and, partly writing things and partly talking to others, and, all of these things. It was quite diverse as well.
Part 2, Coming to Tasmania.
Tell me about what brought you to Tasmania, because I think it's a very interesting story.
So, yeah, look, Tassie was an opportunity for a 12-month sea change, really. At the time, I was living in Brisbane, finished my study, decided to stay, and was in limbo because I was still waiting for my permanent residency to be approved or otherwise. I was on a bridging visa as a result, and I was working in a small hotel in Brisbane, which took me a very long time to actually find employment. Before then, I worked in furniture removalists, cleaning houses, taxi, convenience store, pretty much any job that a migrant has mentioned to you, I did that. But then, I don't know, I got to the point where I was spinning the wheels a lot in my head, at least in terms of, so that was in 2008, 2009, I think. I just literally put the prime of my life on hold from 2003 when I was 25 to 2009-8, just clocked 30 years of age, and I have nothing, right? So yes, I have my master's degree, but whoopie-doo. I don't have superannuation, I don't have employment, I don't have a house. I wasted too many years away from being with my family and home. That is almost going back now. It feels like I'm coming back with nothing. On the other hand, I chose to be in this country, but that country doesn't seem like it's wanting me to be there. That period, it was pretty testing, if you like. You know, I felt like I had absolutely nowhere to go. I couldn't go back home and face my family and say, hey, I came back to start from zero again. And I didn't think I could stay for longer because, again, there was nothing here for me. And then this job came up in Tasmania, in Strahan. Never been to Tassie. Again, there is a theme there in my life story. I knew about Tasmania. I wanted to go to Tasmania based on what you hear and you read and you see on TV, but I certainly had no idea what Strahan is, let alone where it is. And again, like many on the mainland perspective, Tassie is a little dot, and things cannot be too far away from each other, and you cannot be too far away from anything really. So this job came up in Strahan Village as a front office manager, and I applied for it. It was under the banner of Pure Tasmania. So anyway, I applied for that job, and then I got a phone call from the HR manager, and he said, look, you sound like, you have what we're looking for. Would you be interested for an interview? Yes, I am. The operations manager for Strahan Village is actually on the Gold Coast next week or next couple of days, and she wouldn't mind having a face-to-face interview. Yep, no worries, that's fine. So we teed up an interview, if you like, in a pub in Jacobs Creek, which is halfway between Brisbane and the Gold Coast. So I went there, and she was there, her husband was there, and we sat down, had a chat, and she said, okay, well, someone will get in touch with you shortly, or I'll get in touch with you. And then the next day, I had a phone call again from the HR manager to say, would you like to come down to Strahan to have a look at the place and take it from there. I said, yeah, sure, no worries. So during those conversations, I did mention that my girlfriend at the time, she was working also in hotels and hospitality. So the HR manager asked if she would like to come with me and have a look, basically. Yep, sure, no worries. That's a paid weekend away, if you like. So, Megan, would you like to go? Yep, sure, no worries. So we flew down into Launceston. Richard picked us up from there, and we drove down to Strahan via Zee and Rosebery and so on. And I remember in Rosebery, I think we stopped for fuel, and Richard stepped out to fill up the car, and Megan leaned from the back seat towards me, and she said, "We are not moving here." So, and I said, "Oh, we haven't arrived yet. We don't know what we're in for." She said, "No, we're not moving here. Look at it. And I said, okay, sure, no worries. Finished the next 24 hours, but that's about it. We're not coming back. And then we arrived into Strahan. It was a January evening, beautiful day, magnificent, picturesque harbour. And I think, it just, I don't know, it was just nice and warm and cozy and everything else, and beautiful looking. And Meg said to me, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
So we stayed overnight. The next day, had breakfast with the GM, and they showed me around the place and everything else, and then drove me back to Lonnie, and we flew out. And then I got a phone call to say, "Congratulations, you got the job," and they offered the job also to Megan. So I was there as a front office manager, and Megan was there as a receptionist. So we flew down. I came down in February 2009. Yeah, so that was my trip into Tassie, really.
Yeah, it's a massive jump from a city of, 2 million to, for people who don't know, Strahan's about, 600 people?
617. At the time when I moved in, the population was 617. The intention was never to come down to Tasmania and migrate to Tasmania, so to speak. It was more about, again, sea change and restart back in Brisbane 12 months later. So living in Strahan to start with, again, that's February, so that's summer. Tourism season is pretty much in its peak. The daylight is pretty long, and again, beautiful days, busy streets, restaurants are busy. It's a humming little town, and was pretty exciting, really, to be literally on the edge of the world. So the first 2 or 3 months were you pretty much part of the hype of being in a new place, trying to explore, trying to engage, and there's a lot of tourists, and work was extremely busy for me and for Megan, and so it was fun. But then winter comes, and it's Easter at the time. The tourism season in Strahan was pretty much Boxing Day until Easter weekend. Doesn't matter whether Easter weekend is March or April, but Easter weekend you set your clock on it. Someone turns the tap on the 26th and turn it off on Easter Sunday, right? So you go from a humming, buzzing, very busy town to almost empty, right? And then as the days get shorter, more rain, and winter kicks in, less and less tourists come in. You almost experience Strahan, at least from my end. I've seen Strahan within a period of 5 months, from the touristy, picturesque, humming, buzzing, beautiful harbour side town, to dark, gloomy, rainy town that streets are empty. It would be, and it is, a challenging environment to be in. So on one hand, you almost are invisible in the sense of, you are a town, or I am one of a town of 600 people that welcomes roughly about 150,000 people in the period of 6 months, right? To becoming one of 1,000 people, right? So I go from almost being invisible to the world, so to speak, to becoming one of significant part of this world, because there is no one else. And so that was one part. And the other part is, from community infrastructure in that place, at the time anyway, it was pretty lacking, very, very standard. We didn't have a pharmacy, for example. So if you needed a prescription, you need to go to the IGA, drop your prescription in a prescription box. The school bus driver will pick it up the next day on their way to Queenstown, and then they will pick the medication on the way back in the afternoon. So you better not be hurry for your medication. If you are, then you need to drive your car if you like, 45 minutes a very windy, narrow road to go to Queenstown and drive back.
Yeah.
In summer, it's not too bad, but also in summer, this is when you get the slow tourist caravans in front of you, and in winter, it's can be dark and dangerous, and wildlife and so on and so forth. So it's not a pleasant down the road drive to the chemist, put it this way. And if you miss the bus in the morning, you literally need to call the medical union in Queenstown and ask them to turn the fax machine on, and then you can fax them your prescription and make sure you are on the line to say, did you receive it? Is it clear? Yes, it is. Can you please make sure you don't forget it? And drop it off, put it into this wrong bag on the way back. So that was in terms of a chemist. We didn't, the health or doctors, they used to come to Strahan once a week. It's a Tuesday, and they pretty much fully book the doctors when they come in, right? So you better plan your sickness. It's not something, I'm not feeling well, I need to go to the doctor. Oh, yeah, sure, I'll book you in. It's a Tuesday. If they're not there, then go to Burnie or go to Queenstown. So from that perspective, for me, was quite an interesting experience or an interesting perspective, I suppose, in terms of would I have chosen to live that way? I don't know. Again, with me thinking from the other side of the counter. So that really triggered a lot of me being a bit inquisitive, interested, nosy at times. But it was all really stemming from, those little towns are quite. I find them fascinating. But then you add to that my name, my complexion, my accent, and then you have a whole new, another level of, Another level of interesting curveballs. Being an outsider to a small town, regardless who you are, what color, what name, whatever it might be, it will take a lot longer for you to integrate, I would also argue it will take an intentional effort, personal effort for that person to actually integrate. Otherwise, you can literally live there for years and you still be an outsider, right?
Yeah.
And then winter comes, and again, as I said, the town is empty, days are shorter, it's dark, it's rainy, and so on and so forth. And what sparked my interest at that time was, where are all these people that were everywhere? And now you pretty much can't see a person. If you don't go to the IGA at certain time, there's no one in town. And surely these people can be out and about somewhere. And, clearly at night they are in the pub. On, I think, Friday night used to be the golf club dinner. So, the locals will gather there and so on and so forth. So, but outside that, it was really hard to see or find people. And to me, again, was quite interesting. So if you are not part of the local community, if you like, or local neighborhood, then you can be sitting in your house. No one would know whether you are there or not, potentially they wouldn't care. Not because they don't want to care, it's because they have their own circles and they get along with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I start to look a little bit deeper into it, it became clear to me that, again, generally speaking, regional and remote towns across the country and in Tasmania, there's no exception. Unemployment can be a big issue. As a result, unsocial behaviour could be an issue. Petty crime sometimes can be an issue, and binge drinking and substance abuse also. That all becomes part of the making. So that was quite an interesting find for me, because it's not something I expecting, I suppose, to find. Not in particular about Strahan, but generally speaking. Like, again, at the end of the day, that was what I am 6 years into my life in Australia, and I'm still thinking about Australia is the Sydney and the Brisbane is the big cities. It's, the wealth, it's the businesses, it's all of these things. And now all of a sudden I'm in this little regional small town that I can see a different world of Australia that I really genuinely did not realise it existed. So then that took me to, or I suppose it encouraged me to explore ways or different things to integrate with the community and engage, but also to see how we can provide support for community initiatives and so on and so forth. So, and one day we were out at West Beach having fish and chips, and one of the teachers of the primary school was also there, and she was saying that the school doesn't have enough budget to buy computers or laptops or something along these lines. And I said, well, why don't we raise funds for them? And she said, oh, how would you do that? I said, well, I don't know, we'll do something. Now, back that time, I was on a massive health kick and I was running and loved being out and about. And I said, well, because we were at West Beach, and I said, let's do a fun run. And sure enough, about 6 months later, we held our first Beach to Bay fun run. The concept then evolved from just doing a one-off event to fundraise to buy laptops for the kids at the primary school to actually become more of a community engagement piece. Mm-hmm. So the idea of the fun run actually starts and finish in West Beach. That area becomes more of a community festivity side of things. So we would have jumping castle and cooking demonstrations and sling the salmon. And we actually brought in a lot of the service providers on the West Coast as well, because one of the things that is felt by the community in smaller towns as well, that sometimes they are left alone or there is no help or support provided to them and facilities clearly. So the idea there was to present the local community with what they can access from support and from government services and so on and so forth. Those services do not have to physically exist in your town for you to actually access it. So that was really the intention. But I really wanted whatever is going to come out of this initiative to be an ongoing community-led initiative that engages the people. And the intention was to raise $10,000 to buy laptops, 15 laptops for the school. Came October, we had raised just over $40,000. We purchased 15 laptops. We built lockers for the students. There was surplus, a couple of $1,000, and purchased, I think, 1 or 2 play equipment for the school. And there was, I'm going to say, about nearly $20,000 left in the bank, which really, to me, that just established the whole concept. And we went from, are we going to do it or not? Is it going to work or not? To, now we have established a bloody good template, and how can we grow it from there? The run finished very quickly, but the community gathering was really of value. And to me, I still remember standing on the side and thinking, that was pretty damn special. Again, going back to the fact that being an outsider, and I was an outsider of an outsider, with the name, complexion, and accent. So again, part of the engagement with the community was, how can I, not necessarily I as Mohammed, but more a representative of a large employer that I believed we had the social responsibility to actually be part of the fabric of the community rather than, suits and ties, external people come and go. So we, one of the locals, Dish, who used to run the shack and jet boat, came up with the idea of doing Hash Harrier Club. And I thought that was pretty good idea. Hash Harriers, traditionally, they are running clubs, but we altered that to walking club, and so he got a few people together, and I came along, and we used to catch up, I think every Wednesday, 5:00, catch up outside Hamer's pub, and we'll finish there. We'll go for a walk around town. And the setup of the walking track is, so there are clues along the walking track that give you direction from one place to the other, or what's the next, is it right, is it turn, is it turn around, is it whatever it might be. And one of the group will actually go set up the route instructions, so to speak, and stay there, and then when the hash harrier walking start, we'll follow those route instructions and we'll end up wherever we end up. And that week it was my turn. So every week one of the group will do it. I knew the day of the hash harrier would have been pretty busy for me at work, so the night before I went for a drive around with Megan, and was pissing down the rain, and I used cooking flour to actually do the marks around town. It was 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, streets are empty, pissing down the rain, and I would, driving around town, I'll park the car in the middle of the road, and I'll run out, pour the flour, and run back into the car and just drive to the next stop, and so on and so forth. And then going home the next day, the one of the managers after our morning briefing come to me, and he says, so you okay, Mohammed? I said, yeah. He said, you sure? Yes. Is Megan all right? Yes. Why are you asking? And he said, because last night I saw you just stopped suddenly in the middle of the road, and you opened the door and you ran out of the car, and I could see Megan, and I was going to come out and make sure that you guys are all right, but then you jumped back in the car and drove off. I said, why didn't you call me? He said, I don't know, I wasn't sure if Megan was okay. I didn't have Megan's phone number. So he was more worried about Megan. He thought we were in a domestic episode or something. Yeah, and I said, look, no, it's all good. And then that afternoon, I became aware that actually there was a bigger issue than that, and it was that one of the locals rang Crime Stoppers, or Burnie police, to say that there is a person with Middle Eastern appearance going around town spreading suspicious white powder. And of course, something like this was taken extremely seriously, so CARB Burnie sent 2 of their detectives, or 3 of their detectives, under the cover of night. They came down and they took samples of the flour, or the white suspicious powder, and took it back to their labs. And 2 things, I suppose. The one thing is, so that is 2010, and it was dark, it was raining that night, so really, and it was a complaint from the locals. So
I guess they couldn't take any chances.
No, I don't think they could or should, to be honest with you. But credit to the police sergeant at the time, when they clearly contacted him and they were there, and he said, I don't think you have anything to worry about here. And so anyway, they took the samples. I think 1 or 2 of them stayed in town, while the other person the other 2 went back to Burnie to actually send the samples to the lab. And I think 2 of them must have stayed in Strahan waiting for instructions to arrest me. Only the results came back negative. When I was told that afternoon, I thought, that was the funniest thing. But on the other hand, I thought, my goodness me, what is wrong with that person? Because I knew that person, she knew me, she was my next door neighbor. And to me was just are you taking the piss, or are you genuinely interested? Are you genuinely scared? Or I really could not pin it. I lived there for nearly 4 years. It was pretty enriching in so many different ways. I was hard yakka, felt like it was hard yakka living there. Would I do it again? It would have to be really, really, really good reason for it. But I'm so glad I've done it. It felt like it was a life experience worth doing. Yeah. In so many different ways. I felt like I matured. I grew up. I had a different perspective of life and people that I did not have before. I had much more appreciation for the things that you can and should have, much more expectations of what could and should happen, if you like, and particularly for people who are not, by choice or by force, they're not they don't have options, if you like, available to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, those 4 years really genuinely were some of the best of my time in Australia. It also, from a pure career point of view, my career progression in Strahan was pretty good. Like in terms of pretty, I was going to say remarkable. I'm not sure about remarkable, but it was pretty significant. Particularly a couple of years before that, I was in Strahan, in Brisbane. You know, I told you about my work life in Brisbane was just disjointed, was more of casual, didn't feel like I could get anywhere in terms of career progression. And then here I come to Strahan and finding my feet, and then within a very short period of time I became from front office manager to becoming a hotel manager, and along the way there is rooms division manager, and then operations manager, and then a hotel manager, and then, you know, along the way also grew to become part of the regional executive team. And then on the side also I'll get phone calls from the mayor or a councillor or someone to ask for advice or ask for assistance or support in a way or another. It was very, very special time, and I can't really genuinely speak highly enough of what I personally got out of it. In 2003, when the war in Iraq started, and I was in the middle of waiting for my visa to come to Australia and so on and so forth, an opportunity popped its head for me to volunteer with the International Red Cross.
Okay.
On the borders of the Jordan-Iraq borders. At that particular time, there were two major camps on the Jordanian side of the Iraqi-Jordan borders, one for the International Committee for Red Cross and the other one was for the UNHCR. I was part of the International Red Cross, volunteering there. I managed to negotiate with my employer at the time. They were extremely accommodating, so I actually reduced my hours to part-time, and I would do 2 days on the back of weekends, so that's 4 days of volunteering on the borders and 3 days of work, paid work. And I did that for about 2 months, I think, until my visa came through and I left Jordan to come to Australia. Now, during that time, those two months, my volunteering capacity at the camp was to help welcome families fleeing the war zone into Jordan and try to direct them or assist them in their transition. To put things into context, within the first 6 months of the Iraq war in 2003, there were over 1 million people cross the borders into Jordan from Iraq. Whilst my biggest part of my volunteer was with the Red Cross in terms of that short stay, I also visited the UNHCR camp a couple of times on a couple of collaboration we've done. And that, again, it took me a whole new level of understanding or potentially compassion could be to what people actually go through for reasons beyond their control. So that was back in 2003. Time has come for me to leave Australia, and then you head down, bum up, trying to understand the new world you're in. And then things start to settle for me shortly after we arrived in Hobart. I always say I found Australia and Tasmania found me. It's a place where I really, really feel like I do belong. It's a place where I feel that I can be part of the bigger picture. I'm not just a number. And you put that together with my personal belief that every single person has a role to play and a journey to lead. I found myself at home, to be honest with you, in Tasmania, particularly in Hobart. And that drove my interest, if you like, to look at other opportunities in terms of how can I be more of a contributing citizen in Hobart. So while I was with the corporate world, enjoying it, believing that I had a mission and contribution to make. Although it might sound cliche, but it wasn't really tickling my fancies enough. So community work, not-for-profit, is an area that I always had affinity for. So currently I'm the CEO of Variety, the children's charity of Tasmania, a small organisation that is self-funded. We run programs, experiences, and give grants to children who fall through the gaps. The last 4 years for me within the Variety family have been extremely rewarding in ways I've never realised there could be a rewarding job in anywhere, to be honest with you. The access to different people, different community organisations, government agencies, politicians is just something I pinch myself every single time it happens, sometimes 2 days down the track, sometimes while I'm sitting with someone talking to them and I'm thinking, is that happening or I'm dreaming?
How much of your own sort of heritage and culture would you like to pass on to your kids, I guess?
Look, I would love to pass on absolutely everything to them. I have 2 boys, 9 and 7. My wife, she's Aussie, and she doesn't speak Arabic. She's actually Catholic. I'm Muslim, speak Arabic, and so on and so forth. So earlier this year, we went and lived in Jordan. We went to Jordan for three months. It was after COVID. I lost, unfortunately, my mother at age of 69.
Sorry.
I think you're right. And she was on bloody holiday. She went to sleep, and she was in Turkey. So anyway, so she and I couldn't be there. That was last August. I booked a couple of times to go and visit the family, but again, COVID and all that. So this year came, and I really needed to be So after 3 years of not seeing my family and couldn't be there with them during terrible time, we decided to actually go away for 3 months, and it's incredible. I mean, a couple of years ago, you would not have thought that you can actually do work overseas. But then COVID comes and virtual working become part of the reality. So all of a sudden, it's possible actually to go for more than your 3-4 week holiday allowance. And that arrangement, I was extremely lucky with my board and my amazing, incredible team to be supportive and behind me. So I went away for 3 months and I took the 2 boys. Megan could not come with us for the duration of the 4 months due to work, so she followed the last 4 weeks, and then we came back together afterwards. So and that to me was a really, really amazing experience for the boys. To get them to experience and explore a different part of a different side of their culture that genuinely did not they did not necessarily realize that they had that strong connection with. Again, being 9, my son's birthday is tomorrow. Right, so he's turning 9 tomorrow. So his last trip back to Jordan was when he was 6, he would have been 6 or 5 actually. There was connection with cousins and play areas and stuff like that, but there wasn't really a connection from a cultural, social side of things. And this year was definitely something that he did realize, and to the point where he keep asking me when we're going back, and we're going to find a job back in Jordan, and we'll go live there, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so it is an important part of the upbringing of the kids. It is one of the challenges of being in Tasmania from my part of the world, because there isn't enough, there is no Arabic schools, for instance, in Tasmania. There is only one mosque, and not that I am practicing Muslim either, but if you're not free on the Friday during prayer time, then there's not much else for you to do. So it is. It's just that trick between finding that right balance, I suppose, of instilling the cultural aspect of where I have come from, without being so pedantic about learning every single element of it.
Thank you for listening to another episode of 177 Nations of Tasmania. Don't forget you can also follow us on Spotify, Facebook and Twitter. Just look up 177 Nations of Tasmania. And thank you again for listening.